Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Back with Umdat al-Fiqh, and Ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Babu ma yufsidu sawm, chapter, what invalidates fasts. He then gives us a very long list of things which invalidate fast, and we're going to cover all of these here because they're very similar, and I want to point out something about fiqh texts. In general, there will be many different similar situations that will be mentioned one after the other, almost a laundry list like, and they will all fall under general principles or general categories, and then the principle will be mentioned afterwards. And in fact, this is something that Ibn Qudama does here in this chapter. Number one, he talks about there are essentially three things that happen when a person's fast is broken. Number one, they have done something to intentionally break that fast. Number two, they have done something that does not intentionally break that fast. And number three, they were exposed to something beyond their control, and therefore we ask, what is the status of their fast? And then he follows it up with a general principle, and that is al-aslu baqa'u ma kana ala ma kan, that the fundamental ruling is the stasis or the status quo being maintained for the ruling of something until it changes. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by this. He says, من أكل أو شرب أو استعطى أو أوصل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان أو استقاء أو استمنى أو قبل أو لمس أو أمذى أو كرر النظر حتى أنزل أو حجم أو احتجم عامدا ذاكرا لصومه فسد. So he says, whoever eats or drinks or snorts su'ut, snorts a type of snuff into their nose, or directs to their insides something from any part of their body, or vomits, or masturbates, or kisses, touches, or has pre-ejaculate fluid exit their body, or looks at something until they ejaculate, or does hijama, or has it done for him, purposefully remembering the status of his fast, then his fast is invalid. This is the first type. So the first type in all these examples here is that the person has done one of two things. They have either purposefully entered something into their body or purposefully made something exit their body, right? And there are a few reasons why this is mentioned. So the basis from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. So eat and drink until the black thread becomes clear to you from the white thread of Fajr. Meaning until you see that daybreak, that line of daybreak on the horizon, then you can eat and drink. Therefore, if you eat and drink after that time, then you have broken your fast. You have invalidated your fast. He also, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said, بالغ في الاستنشاق إلا أن تكون صائما. That you should exaggerate sniffing water up the nose while making wudu to clean it out, except if you are fasting. Why? Because the water might go through your nasal cavity and down your throat into your belly, right? And so then entering your body. Which means that while this act is permissible, you're doing something which causes it to forcefully and willfully enter your GI tract. He then says, he says, ista'ata, use su'ud or snuff. So the same way, if it's water, then if you were sniffing, snuff or tobacco or any other type of powder that would be snuffed into the nose and it would reach the GI tract, then that would be something that would invalidate your fast. And that's why he again follows it up. He says, أو أوصل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان, or causes to reach his innards, right? This idea of the jof. We can usually say it's GI tract because that's what's usually meant, the inside of the body. He says, or causes it to enter the body from any place other than that. أو استقاء, or causes himself to vomit. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith narrated in Tirmidhi from Abu Hurairah, من ذرعه قيء فليس عليه قضاء ومن استقاء عمدا فليقضي. Whoever is forced by nature to vomit, then he does not have to make up his fast. But whoever forces himself to vomit purposefully, then must make up that fast. So notice, this actually brings us into the second point here, and that is those who are forced by nature, right, to do something that they didn't want to do, so it doesn't break their fast. He then says, "Oh, istamna," or masturbates, basically causes himself to ejaculate using his hand, and for women the same thing goes. أو قبل أو لمس أو أمذى, or kisses or touches, or has pre-ejaculate fluid release. Now this is something which is specific to the Hanbali madhab. The other madhahib do not consider this issue of pre-ejaculate fluid to be effective in breaking one's fast, but the madhab does. أو كرر النظر حتى أنزل, or continuously looks at something until he ejaculates, right? And then in these situations, he has done something to forcefully make something exit his body, releasing something from the body, relieving the body in some type of sensual sensory way, in the same sensual sensory way that a person might get enjoyment from eating food. The same is then, all of these are analogous to the hadith that we mentioned of someone who is forced to, who forces themselves to vomit, gags themselves, and then forces themselves to vomit. He then says, أو حجم أو احتجم, or does hijama, bloodletting, cupping, or has it done for him, due to the hadith of Abu Dawood, أفطر الحاجم والمحجوم, that the person who does hijama and the one it is done for have broken their fast. Why the one who it has done for? Because we mentioned they are forcefully releasing something from their body which was not going to be released. Why would the person doing hijama have break their fast? Well, it's been said that if you've ever seen old time methods of doing hijama, then you'd know that one of the things that they do is that they hold a horn with a small hole in it. It's like a goat's horn, and they place that horn over the head, and then they suck out the blood through it, and so there is going to be some blood and other bodily fluids that are going to go into their mouth, and thus they're willfully entering into their GI tract, not due to some obligation that they have in the Sharia, but simply to facilitate this act for another person, and therefore that would break their fast. And of course, this is one of the issues that is contentious and is particular to some of the madhahib, and not to some. So you should review this if you have not studied this issue before. But according to the madhab, this hadith is taken at its face value, and so a person who does hijama for others in that way, or has it done for him, then this applies. If a person, however, doesn't ingest anything, then that would not apply to him. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. He says that عامدا ذاكرا لصومه فسد, who does it purposefully, remembering his fast, then his fast is invalid. So you have to do it purposefully, and you have to do it remembering that you are fasting. Why? Because if a person breaks their fast through forgetfulness, then their fast is still valid. He says, وَإِنْ فَعَلَهُ نَاسِيًا أَوْ مُكْرَهًا لَمْ يَفْسُدْ صَوْمُهُ. And if a person were to do it out of forgetfulness, or coercion, he would not break his fast. Why? Because of the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ said, إذا أكل أحدكم أو شرب ناسيا فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقى. Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, that the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever eats or drinks something forgetfully, then let him complete his fast, because it is only Allah who has given him food or given him drink. So therefore, in another narration, it's mentioned, فَإِنَّمَا هُوَ رِزْقٌ رَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ. It is only sustenance which Allah has given him. And we have to be truthful with ourselves about this. We remember when we break our fast and not try and fool ourselves and think that we're going to eat a 12-course meal and then remember that we're fasting. So he says, فَإِنْ فَعَلَهُ وَإِنْ فَعَلَهُ نَاسِيًا أَوْ مُكْرَهًا لَمْ يَفْسُدْ صَوْمُهُ. So if he does it forgetfully or out of coercion, then his fast is not invalid, is not invalidated. Why out of coercion? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, غُفِرَ لِأُمَّتِي الْخَطَأُ وَالنِّسْيَانُ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ. My ummah has been forgiven for their mistakes and for their forgetfulness and those things that they are coerced to do, they are forced into doing. So if somebody comes at gunpoint and tells you to eat, then your fast is still valid. He then says, now he goes to the second category, and that are things which are done or things that happen to this person, but they are not things that or I'm sorry, this is number 3. So number 2 was those things that happen forgetfully or out of coercion, and number 3 are those things they say يَصْعُبُ التَّحَرُّزُ مِنْهَا. It's difficult to shield oneself from. So he says, وإن طار إلى حلقه ذباب أو غبار أو تمضمض أو استنشق ماء أو فكر فأنزل أو قطر في إحليله أو احتلم أو ذرعه قيء لم يفسد صومه. So if a fly flew into his throat, or dust flew into his throat, or he made madmada, meaning he washed out his mouth, or he had water, he sniffed water into his nose and blew it out, and then some of it reached his throat, or water reached his throat, or he thought of something and then ejaculated, or he dripped into his urethra some ointment or some type, or he had a wet dream, or she had a wet dream. This also applies to both men and women, or was overpowered by the urge to vomit and vomited, then their fast would not be invalid. So why is that? This is for several reasons. It's narrated Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, I've done something immense today. I kissed my wife while I was fasting." The Prophet ﷺ said, أَلَوْ أَرَأَيْتَ لَوْ تَمَضْمَضْتَ مِنْ إِنَاءٍ أو مِنْ إِنَاءِ مَاءٍ وَأَنْتَ صَائِمٌ. He said, well, what if you were to go and rinse your mouth out with water from a vessel? I said, فَلَا بَأْسَ. There would be no harm in that. He said, فَمَا. So then what? Right? So the idea here being the analogy that when you rinse out your mouth, you have small trace amounts of water that are left in your mouth. When you inhale something, you have small trace amounts of dust that go into your throat. But because you are not trying to make that reach your GI tract, you are not trying to ingest it, but you are simply breathing something in, then those are things that would not affect your fasting. And similarly, if a person has to use an inhaler while they are fasting, right, or a disc or something like that, and it's being breathed into their lungs, and it is not meant to go down to their stomach, then any remnants that are left in their mouth and in their throat then do not break the fast as well, just as the water left behind from madmada does not break the fast. Or thinks about something and ejaculates, or has to apply some ointment to their urethra, or has a wet dream, or is overpowered by vomit and vomits, then their fast is not invalid. Why? Because of the hadith that we mentioned before of the Prophet ﷺ saying that whoever فَمَنْ ذَرَعَهُ الْقَيْء فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ قَضَاء, whoever is overpowered by vomit, then he does not have to make up his fast. And so these are the three categories that are particular to those people who are fasting and will break their fast. Again, number one, person who does something in specifically putting into or taking out of their body something to experience that sensation and relief. Number two, the person who that happens to either forgetfully or out of coercion, then their fast is not broken. And number three, the person who this happens to inadvertently, and it is so difficult for them to be able to shield themselves from, then their fast is not broken as well. He then mentions a few issues. We're going to leave that to the next video, inshallah ta'ala, and that is that issues of eating and drinking when the time is close to the other, or to the time of starting or breaking the fast. We'll talk about that next time. Assalamu alaikum.